everyone, this is Mackenzie with 818 Stitch Co. And I am recording this tutorial to show you guys how I do my color changes on my wall hangings. So right now I am working on my Boho Sun wall hanging and I am getting ready to start row 16. So I have my scissors and I have my 4mm hook, and I'm going to show you guys two methods to color change for these wall hangings. These are the two that I use. Truthfully, I use them both, even on the same wall hanging. And so I'm gonna show you guys how I do those and explain a little bit about when I use each one. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, I'm getting ready to start row 16 on this pattern. So I have just finished row 15 right here. And if you're familiar with wall hangings or you've made a wall hanging pattern before, you know that the odd numbered rows, so the one I just finished, is the right side, the side that will be showing up the wall hanging. So when I go to do row 16, an even numbered row, I'll be working on the wrong side. So I have finished row 15 and I've done my chain 1. So I'm ready to turn and begin row 16, which starts with 19 single crochet stitches in parchment, which is this light beige color. So I'm going to complete those now. Okay, so here I have completed 18 of the 19 parchment colored stitches that I need to complete. So I'm getting ready to start the 19th stitch, and this is where I'm going to do my color change. Now this pattern next calls for 2 stitches in gold. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you the method of carrying the yarn along the back side of your work. As you can see where I have already done some of this pattern, here is where I've carried some yarn, here is where I've cut and tied, which is the other method I'm going to show you. So it's totally up to you, do whatever you feel most comfortable with, but that's why I'm going to show you both these methods, and you can practice with both and figure out what you prefer. So on this, because I am only going to do 2 stitches in gold, I'm going to carry. So that's an instance where I typically will carry my yarn. You can see here I haven't cut this tail off from the previous row because I knew I was going to be picking it up pretty close to where I dropped it. So that's another instance where I will carry it rather than cut and tie if I know I'm going to be picking that yarn back up nearby. It just seems a little smoother for me making those transitions. Again, do whatever you feel comfortable with. So I'm starting my last stitch in parchment. I'm going to pull up 1 loop. Then, because I am working on the wrong side of my wall hanging, I want to make sure that I bring this working yarn across in front of my stitch. Otherwise my tail will be on the wrong side and will be showing through. So then I'm going to bring my gold over and pick up my gold and pull it through to finish that stitch. So now I'll go ahead and make sure that my yarn where I carried it is pulled straight but not tight, otherwise I'm going to have a pucker in my wall hanging. So I don't know how well you can see that, but I want it pulled straight without a lot of slack, but also not pulled tight enough that it's going to start pulling. So I'm going to leave my parchment color attached. That way I can just pick it up again here in 2 stitches. So I'm going to do my 2 stitches in gold. There's 1. Then on my second stitch, I'm going to pull up the loop, and instead of finishing my second stitch with gold, I'm going to go ahead and pull this over so that it's on this wrong side of my wall hanging where I want it to be. And I'm going to pick back up my beige right here from 2 stitches prior, and I'm going to pull through with beige. So again, this is an instance where I will carry because, as you can see, since it was only 2 stitches, that's all the carried yarn that's on there. So for me, that just makes more sense in my head. Again, feel free to cut and tie if that is what you prefer. So now I'm going to do my parchment colored stitches. The pattern calls for 5, and then I'm going to switch back to gold. So I'm going to go ahead and carry here again, just because 5 stitches, I would prefer to just carry that personally. So I'm going to do my 5 in parchment. 2, 3, 4, and then when I do my 5th, again, I'm going to do the same thing. Pull up 1 loop, but don't finish my stitch. Bring my parchment color over, and bring my gold back to start with it as my working yarn when I pull through that stitch. Okay, so that is how I carry. See, I carried that from here to here. I'm going to finish this row with gold, and then I will meet back up with you when I go to start row 17 on the right side of the wall hanging so that you can see how I do those color changes. Okay, so now here's where I'm at the end of row 16, ready to start row 17. So I'm going to do my chain 1, and then I'm going to flip it over. And so here's where you can see, since I pulled those working tails to the front when I was working on the wrong side, now we have nice clean color changes on the right side of the wall hanging, and you can't see those tails. So that's what carrying the yarn looks like. For this row, I'm going to show you what it looks like to cut and tie for your color changes. So to begin this row, we need 24 stitches in gold. So I'm going to do those stitches, and I'll meet back up with you right here where we will do our first color change. Okay, so here we are ready to start stitch number 24, which is right here, my last stitch in gold. So I'm going to pull up a loop, and then I'm going to drop my gold. Now I left my parchment still attached because I knew I was going to pick it up right here in the same spot. So I did carry that one. We're going to pull through with that. And then I'm going to make sure that my stitches are nice and even. So if your stitch loosens up a little bit on that color change, you can just give a little pull on those tails to tighten that back up. Okay, so now I have changed to parchment. Now, because I'm working on the right side of the wall hanging on an odd numbered row, I'm going to have those color change tails to the back here. So now that I have switched over to my parchment, I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to snip off my gold tail, just like that. Then I am going to continue on with my beige yarn. This row of the pattern calls for 4 parchment colored stitches and then another 4 gold. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to use cut and tie on the next couple of color changes here. So we've got 1 parchment stitch, 2, 3, and then on this 4th one, we're going to pull up a loop, and then we're going to drop this yarn tail and snip, and then we are going to take the gold that we previously snipped off and pull it through that last step of that stitch. So now we are changed over to gold. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt back, since I want these tails on the back, and I'm going to tie these together. And now when you do this, you want the knot to be secure, so you want to do a double knot, but you're not going to pull it tight, because if you pull it tight, you're probably going to tighten that stitch too much to where it's either hard to work into or it distorts the look of your stitches for the look of the wall hanging. Like, you want these stitches to be nice and uniform. So if you over tighten it, that's gonna pucker right there. So we do that, and then we can just snip these tails short, just like that, and then continue on with our gold. So 4 gold stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then on the 4th one, we're gonna pull up 1 loop, drop our gold yarn, and we're gonna reattach our parchment as we pull through that last step of the stitch, just like we did in the previous color change. Now we can take our scissors and snip off gold, again, we will turn it so that we can see that. Those yarn tails, pull those into a double knot. Don't over tighten. Then you can snip the ends just to give yourself a little bit cleaner look on the back. These are gonna look messy on the back. There's only so much you can do about that without having to weave in all of these ends. And ultimately you would still see the colors popping through. So it's just gonna be messy on the back. And then I finish this row with my parchment color. And I will show you guys what that looks like when I get to the end of the row. Okay, so here we are at the end of that row. And so I'm gonna flip this over so you can see what the wrong side looks like with those color changes. So here's the row we just completed. Here's the 2 knots where we cut and tied off those ends around that gold color change. I don't know how well you can see that, but, and then you can see right here where we carried yarn in our previous row. So you can kind of see the difference there. So with that cut and tie, I showed you how to do that when you're working on the right side. When you're working on the wrong side, you're gonna do the exact same thing. When you change your colors, you're gonna do the same thing that you do when you carry yarn. You're gonna pull your yarn, your working yarn across to the front while you're continuing with your stitches so that that tail is on this side, and snip off just like normal. Do that color change just like we did in the previous row. You're just gonna make sure that when you knot your 2 strands, they are on this side, your wrong side of your wall hanging. So that is how you do those color changes. Again, you can use all cut and tie, you can carry all of your tails, you can do a combination of both, whatever you're most comfortable with. So I hope this helped, and thank you for watching.